so many people look to Bob Dylan as a style icon. I mean, if you think about John Lennon, when he started wearing the little hat that Bob Dylan wore on the cover of his debut album, John Lennon later claimed that he was already wearing that cap and like, oh, what a coincidence. Bob Dylan also has this
Yeah.
hat. I don't believe him for a second.
How's Bob Dylan?
How can I answer that if you got the nerve to ask me?
It happened so long ago, I wasn't even born.
A song that doesn't pussyfoot around or turn a blind eye to human nature.
Who threw that glass in the street? Who did it?
I'm a translation to go to animal my soul, knit my return.
How about rap?
I'm afraid to go on the internet. I'm afraid some pervert's gonna lure me somewhere.
You want some eggs?
My name is Laura Tenchet.
My name is Rebecca Slayman, and this is
The Bob Dylan Hotline, where we answer your questions about all things Bob. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Laura. I've been doing a lot of research for this episode, scrolling Google Images, flipping through my books. Yeah, do you have anything to say about it?
I'm really excited about this one. I think this will be fun for the people who watch the YouTube version of the conversation because I think it will include some visual material. But if you're listening on the podcast, fear not. We will translate
covered.
everything. Yeah. We'll be explaining what we're talking about. But yeah, because today we are talking about Bob Dylan's appearance a little bit. Should we just get started with the question?
Yeah, sure. This is from Andy.
Hi, Laura and Rebecca. This is Andy. Lately, I've been interested in how Bob Dylan uses fashion throughout his career. He doesn't seem to have a very consistent approach to it, and it just gives me so many questions, like, why does he wear the same suede jacket on 3 completely different album covers in the 60s? When is his outfit a part of the show and when is it not? Is the North Face jacket he's wearing now an artistic statement? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Such a great question. I'm so excited, actually. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Bob Dylan is a fashion icon. We've said it before and we'll say it again. And I do think his choices are intentional.
Yeah, that's literally the headline above my notes, Bob Dylan style icon.
Yeah.
I've been making a case for Bob Dylan as style icon for years. On Instagram. I love posting little not breakdowns. I mean, I'm not like that involved or that deep in the fashion world, but I really love to take a look at his outfits and kind of like say what I think makes the outfit so great, because I think he is really creative in the way that he dresses. I think he's an artist in a way that you can also, I think he also likes to express himself creatively in the outfits that he wears, and I think that's really fascinating. And I think it's fun to talk about that side of his self-expression.
Yeah, and I think so much of his life and his age play into that, because us today looking at him, like today the normal fashion choice for most of America at least is like a t-shirt and shorts. And Bob Dylan's from another time when men wore hats, and you can see that he's almost always got some kind of hat or hood on. But also he came of age in this time of self-expression. And then later, I think his idea of maybe costuming, or we could say drag, is also an element there. So all those different aspects of like who makes Bob Dylan, and also like the time he grew up in, is all wrapped up in that.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting to think about trendiness in that light as well, because I think, for example, in the 60s when he became famous, there was a time when he was very trendy. He was, when he went to London, he went to Savile Row and got suits tailored, and he was very much kind of on the cutting edge of that. But at the same time, it always felt like he was not, as the Kinks have that song, a dedicated follower of fashion. And to me, it seemed like there were a couple of years where he was very much trying to be like at the peak of trendiness. But I think most of the time in his career, it seemed like he was finding his own style. I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
for example, about even in 1965. So when he came over to the UK to film Don't Look Back, and he was wearing that amazing leather blazer, which he would later then also wear at Newport Folk Festival, and which is now in the Bob Dylan Center on display. And to me, that was always such a perfect example of something that is so timeless in its stylishness and
Mm-hmm.
has been, I think, has been copied by so many people. And to me, that is a great example of something that was worn by Bob Dylan when he was kind of like setting a trend. Um, and that's why it still reads as so timeless. I'm not sure if I explained that the best way, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can track his musicianship through that period so clearly in his fashion, because prior
Mm-hmm,
to then, he's dressing like, if you look at the Newport 1963, he's dressing like a farmer. He
mm-hmm,
is like wearing just jeans and like a button down shirt, kind of ratty clothes, because he was poor and he was just sourcing what he had from Minnesota.
mm-hmm,
People often talk about the freewheeling jacket, that it is like, it seems so insufficient for the cold New York City winter. But uh, he didn't have a lot of money at the time, so he was just like re-wearing old clothes, and it also helped give him that like that look he was going for of someone from the Midwest, a traveler, Woody Guthrie LARPing.
mm,
And then when he transitions into more trendy clothes like the leather, it's him getting young. He learns how he was old and he learns how to get young.
mm-hmm.
As he says in his own words, and the leather and the suede and the patterned shirts and stuff. It is him like deciding to live in his own time, in his own moment.
Yeah, and I think it is actually remarkable to me how much the music that he's making is reflected in the way that he's dressing. And
Mm-hmm.
as you already say, early on, when he was the folky and in the Woody Guthrie vein, he was also wearing these very um, unpretentious reading work clothes. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, like a lot of that was probably just because he didn't really have money for more expensive or more flashy clothes. But that was also something that he wanted to communicate in the way that he was dressing, right? And and then when he was ready to leave that type of music, that style of music behind, and that scene behind, then that was also being reflected in the clothes that he wore, by all of a sudden wearing tighter trousers and the leather blazer. And then he was dressing more as this kind of poet, out of time. I think in 64 he had this little like almost 19th century poet reading moment going on before he then kind of switched more into like the beatnik and rock and roll mode. And I think I think that is it's not unique to Bob Dylan. I think that you want to communicate how you feel and the kind of aesthetic that you want to put out into the world, that you try to mirror that in the way that you dress. But I think especially for men, I think that it's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
And in any case, I think it's interesting, and I think to me it's remarkable that you can almost like look at Bob Dylan, and by his outfit, I mean, I think we can tell by his outfit what year we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
um but I think that in of itself is pretty interesting, and I think that says something about the way that he wants to present himself visually as well.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking a lot about masculinity, I
Hmm.
assume. But it's always struck me as very interesting with male performers who are like portray this kind of coolness, like they don't care, but
Hmm.
they have to put on those clothes in the morning and decide to buy those clothes. And so many of those, like, I guess, archetype of guys I'm thinking about are all modeling themselves after Bob Dylan. Like, Bob Dylan is the pioneer
Hmm.
of cool, and
Hmm.
he's not someone I think we would say he's not someone who just puts on whatever. Like, he makes intentional choices,
Yeah.
which seems to be antithetical to what that cool masculinity is. So it's kind of a cool, like, it breaks that like model of thinking that being masculine is someone who doesn't care about how you dress, because dressing like that is an admission that you do care. Especially like Bob Dylan in the 70s, I think, becomes this archetype of cool, like with his hat and his like crazy jackets and scarves and stuff. It's just like creates this model.
Mm. and and he influenced the style of so many other people, as you say. I think for he, especially in Don't Look Back in the mid 60s, it really feels like he uh, found a type of, yeah, kind of like timeless cool that still
Mm-hmm.
reads as incredibly cool and still reads really fresh. I think, I mean, you still see people wearing essentially very similar outfits now. And of course, he himself was following in the vein of like the beatniks and so on. It's not like he completely came up with that himself, but I think there was something to that combination of the leather blazer, the kind of tight trousers, and the kind of heeled boots with the sunglasses indoors, that just, and that kind of slightly wild, unruly hair that just immediately reads as Bob Dylan to us. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just a kind of archetype that he he
Yeah.
became. And it it's got to be said. I mean, maybe this is obvious, but nowadays, so many male artists and male celebrities that are seen as fashionable have stylists and have
Mm-hmm.
groomers and have
Mm-hmm.
people who help them put an image forward, and it's branded and it's calculated. Whereas Bob Dylan and generally artists at the time, you know, they usually express themselves and did that themselves. And so many people followed, you know, so many people look to Bob Dylan as a style icon. I mean, if you think about John Lennon, when he started wearing the little hat that Bob Dylan wore on the cover of his debut album, John Lennon later claimed that he was already wearing that cap, and like, oh, what a coincidence, Bob Dylan also wears this
Yeah.
hat. I don't believe him for a second. I mean, and I find that quite endearing. I like,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I always liked about John Lennon, that he always wanted to be this very uh, kind of like almost hard,
Mm-hmm.
like tough guy that he put forward. But I think he was actually, like, at his core, like, very soft and very, um, you know, a fanboy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And yeah, Bob Dylan, I want to bring in, I don't know if you know about this, but Dr. John Lasser is doing a project right now about Bob Dylan cosplay, where he's doing research
Yeah,
on that. And I actually asked if like we could talk about it on this podcast, and he said yes, of course. And he's
amazing.
looking for more participants. So if you or someone you know is intentionally dressing up as Bob Dylan,
Hmm.
he's got a couple questions to ask you, and I would look forward to whatever the result of that project brings, because that's such an interesting subject.
It really is. And you know what I've been thinking about um with this idea of cosplaying Bob Dylan is that it's almost like, I mean, Bob Dylan, as we already touched on, has gone through so many iterations with his style, and this is something that we'll obviously talk about more. There are so many looks that I personally consider kind of iconic Bob Dylan looks, but I would argue that for the wider public, there probably aren't that many looks that read immediately recognizable as Bob Dylan. And I think
Mm-hmm.
until a few years ago, it really was mostly the 60s Bob Dylan. I mean, either you had the folky, which would then become readable as Bob Dylan when you maybe had the harmonica holder or maybe like the little hat, you know.
Yeah.
And then what clearly became, again, readable as Bob Dylan would be the mid 60s, the curls, the Ray-Ban Wayfarers, maybe the
Yeah.
polka dot shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that was immediately recognizable as Bob Dylan. But in recent years, I think that's been expanded. And now I think Rolling Thunder Bob is very much part of what has become kind of iconic Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know, like, if one of our listeners could maybe let us know if this, how far back this dates, because I think that even though, like, more serious fans have obviously known about like this with the white face and everything, I think it's only entered the mainstream more recently, maybe because of the Scorsese Rolling Thunder documentary.
Yeah.
But that's something I've
I would
observed.
think
What do you
so.
think?
I think so. And I think another reason it could be more visible is because when you are trying to like dress up for Bob Dylan for Halloween, for
Hmm.
example, it's really hard to look like him, like in that iconic way, if you don't have that curly hair.
Yeah.
But putting on the white face mask, as Bob did, is that like you can transform yourself to look like a version of Bob Dylan. It's just like an easier transformation into him that would be recognizable to other people. But I agree, it's probably because of the Scorsese doc. And thank you so much, Martin Scorsese, for that, for cleaning up that footage.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. That performance footage is so, so good.
It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. And I think Rolling Thunder really is a great example for what we're talking about in terms of the deliberate way in which Bob Dylan uses a certain look to define a certain tour, a certain
Hmm.
era, as we now like to call it. And again, I don't really think that that is completely unique to Bob Dylan. I mean, actually, when I talked to Sean Marshall from Cat Power, she was telling me about when she goes on tour, she likes to choose maybe one outfit that she repeats that kind of becomes
Hmm.
associated with that tour. And I think a few artists do that. But it is interesting to see how the outfits that Bob Dylan chooses for a certain tour kind of correspond to the music and the visuals. So with Rolling Thunder, the the look of his outfits on stage like really match the um theatrical atmosphere, and the makeup obviously too, and the hat with the flowers, it has that vaudeville um look to it. And so it strikes me as very deliberate, especially when you then compare it to, for example, the tour that came before in 74, which was a lot more put together. It was an arena tour, and actually like the outfits that he wore for the 74 tour were kind of nondescript compared
Hmm.
to compared to the the houndstooth suit in 66, which was a bit more like flashy, and then Rolling Thunder following that. And then when you
Hmm.
look to the next tour in 78, that was so again, people like to say it was almost like Las Vegas style, um, because he and the band had matching suits tailored. And I love the outfits that he wears in 78. I love the silk
Hmm.
shirt that he kind of like keeps buttoned down, and the eyeliner. But again, there's a real theatricality to the way that he dresses on stage.
Hmm.
That again suggests he wants it to be a performance, and he wants to step out on stage and make it clear that this is him in performer mode. And I think that that will be interesting when we talk about kind of what's been happening more recently. But do you have any thoughts on
Yeah.
this in general?
I mean, yeah, it all goes back to Little Richard, doesn't it?
Yes,
Because
yeah.
Grayley Heron, once again, did a great presentation at the Dylan and Masculinity Conference, and then published that in, I think, the Dylan Review, where he talks about those style influences that he had. But in the case we're talking about, Little Richard is like the most obvious.
Yeah.
Dylan was a huge fan of him and his theatrics.
Hmm.
So it makes sense that that is what he associates with like a good performance, is all this like makeup and flashy clothes and stuff. Yeah, Little Richard. He wants to go and become Little Richard. That's what he said.
Yeah, and that's actually so true. Even in general, the fact that Bob Dylan grew up in the 50s, and that's the time that really shaped him as
Hmm.
a lover of music. I think the 50s were quite theatrical in the way that people performed. There was almost like a campness to a lot of the performers, like Elvis too, you know. And there is that. I know Grayley mentioned that in his. I don't remember if that was actually in his paper on Dylan and masculinity, or if that was in one of his great Substack essays, because we can't make it through an episode without talking about Grayley's Substack. The bit in Chronicles where he talks about meeting Gorgeous George, the wrestler,
Yeah.
and that he said, what did he say to Bob Dylan? That happened to me when Gorgeous George, the great wrestler, came to my hometown. And then he says, suddenly the doors burst open and in came Gorgeous George himself. He roared in like the storm, didn't go through the backstage area. He came right through the lobby of the building and he seemed like 40 men. It was Gorgeous George in all his magnificent glory with all the lightning and vitality you'd expect. And then he says, he brushed by the makeshift stage and glanced towards the sound of the music because teenage Bob Dylan and his band were playing in this venue. He didn't break stride, but he looked at me, eyes flashing with moonshine. He winked and seemed to mouth the phrase, "You're making it come alive."
Yes. Yeah. That
So
is iconic.
So amazing. And clearly the effect that this theatrical entrance had on teenage Bob Dylan and his association with that being a performance that makes things come alive, and that this is something they have in common, something that they share, I think is really important when we consider how Bob Dylan performs and wants it to be a performance. And obviously clothes are a part of that.
Yeah, and he's portraying like something not so I think intentionally portraying something you would not see in the everyday. I just pulled up Grayley Heron's essay here. He points out that in Philosophy of Modern Song, when he's talking about Tutti Frutti, he offers like a queer reading of the song and intentionally points that out. He's like a fruit, a male homosexual. Tutti Frutti is all fruit. And this signaling to a young Bob Dylan is like something outside of the ordinary, something other that Dylan identifies with. Because Dylan has always said like he wasn't born in the right place, he wasn't born with the right name. It's so aligned with queer readings and queerness in general that Dylan would go and then want to present that to other people, this like other way of being that's not part of everyday life.
Yeah, and clothes as performance to communicate the identity that you want to assume. I mean, that's drag, right? And unlike a certain writer in Bob Dylan studies, I have no problem with drag.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my
neither does
God.
Dylan. He sings about it at least 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he sings "Gonna Dress in Drag," and
Gonna dress in drag. He sings "Hungry Like a Man in Drag." The waitress, he was handsome. Like there's all these explicit mentions of gender performance and drag.
And there's something so liberating about that. You know, I think I would assume that for someone like Bob Dylan, exactly as you say, someone who maybe comes from a town where all your eccentricities weren't embraced or were kind of like looked at as something strange, be that your sexual identity or your gender identity or just your way of expressing yourself in whatever way you want to you want to understand that. Exactly, being an artist. And honestly, I think there's the lines are blurry there. I really don't think there is as like distinct a line there as like some people would like to make it out to be. But I think especially for someone like that, someone who is a weirdo, you know, I think there's something incredibly liberating in understanding or realizing that you have the power to change your image and you have the power to influence how people perceive you. And then I think it makes sense that he really looked up to the kinds of artists and performers who were very free in their expression. And yes, of course, I think queer people played a huge role in that, be it Little Richard or be it Johnny Ray, who Bob Dylan loved. I think he said like that was the first pop star I love. And he is so deeply weird in such a gorgeous way. I mean, I discovered Johnny Ray because of Bob Dylan, and I absolutely fell in love with his music because it is just so beautiful. I mean, like it makes me want to cry. It's so beautiful, and it's also really weird, and that's partly what makes it timeless and beautiful. You know.
Mm. Yeah, and another thing I was wondering about was like how much of Bob Dylan's fashion choices are for comfort. Like what is easy to put on as a uniform on stage. And also thinking about his early influences, I'm thinking about Buddy Holly, how he talks about um, seeing him in concert and feeling something was transferred to him. But Dylan very intentionally makes the choice not to wear his glasses on stage. He never wears the things that allow him to see. And thinking about Buddy Holly, I'm thinking back to that picture of him in his apartment with Susie, and they're so young, they have like the baby fat, and he has these big thick glasses that look just like you look just like Buddy Holly. But he never wears them on stage or like in public ever. And I'm wondering if he just doesn't want to see the crowd, or if I think it's more that he just doesn't like the way he looks in them, which is why he wears sunglasses that are prescription for the rest of his life that we know.
Something that was also initially copied by John Lennon, because John Lennon also needed glasses, and I think he really liked that Bob Dylan found a way around that by wearing sunglasses. And it is really funny how many people were fooled for so long. They were like, "Oh my god, he's so cool. He's wearing sunglasses." And but then at the same time, it's like when it's normal glasses, like, "Oh my god, what a dork." It's like, it's fun. It's almost like a Clark Kent Superman kind of split. It's like the difference isn't that big, and yet people perceive it as such a huge gap in coolness.
The style choice. I like when he's on Pawn Stars and he's being shown his own album, and he's like, "Hang on," and he puts on the sunglasses to see it.
Yeah. I had a few moments of Bob Dylan in clothes that kind of came to mind as I was thinking about this. So the one, because we're talking about like how deliberate Bob Dylan is with clothes, and I do really believe that to be true.
Yeah.
But I think the other strength, the other thing that makes Bob Dylan's style so good is because I think there is also a real effortless with it. You know, I think he cares about clothes, but I think it's not. As with anyone who has good style, you know, it's not too calculated. It's, you know what you like. And I have said this multiple times on this podcast. I think to me, Bob Dylan's greatest strength as an artist is his taste. And I think that relates to his music. And I also think that also comes through in the clothes that he wears as well. And I was thinking, my friend Julie Cohn, whom you also know, like she always talks about that a picture of Bob Dylan, I think maybe from summer camp, where he's wearing this little white short sleeved shirt and has it tucked in, or maybe he has like even has like a little has it tied like at the front. But that seems like a very early little fashion statement, you know, something just like a little something to kind of like make yourself stand out, you know, which I think is really cute. And then in her I was trying to find the passage, and unfortunately I didn't find it, so I can't read it out, but I'm pretty sure that in Susie Rotolo's memoir, A Free Will in Time, she talks about the photo shoot for the Free Will and Bob Dylan, and how he like very carefully chose the jacket, even though it really wasn't a match for the New York winter, as you already mentioned. And she just generally says, you know, he would just choose something that was on the floor and like try to make it look effortless, but he did actually put like a bit of effort in, you know, there was he did care about clothes. And that was like one that I was thinking about. And then I was also thinking about Jerry Schatzberg, who photographed Dylan in the mid 60s, and how he was talking about how they all shared clothes at the time, which I think is interesting. And yeah, that to me again is kind of like it's a uh, it's a sign that everyone kind of cared about clothes, and everyone kind of like maybe tapped into the same kind of like aesthetic and the same kind of style. And so do you want to add something to that?
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
tell.
That story is almost the same as the when they're about to shoot the Highway 61 cover, which is at Albert Grossman's house on Gramercy Park West. If anyone wants to take my tour, I will show you it. On the day of the shoot, Daniel Kramer, the photographer, said that Bob had this shirt on, but he remembered that he had left. Yes,
That's the one.
This is the one. Bob remembered he had left his Triumph motorcycle shirt inside, and he like stopped the shoot. He was like, wait, I gotta get my cool shirt, and he ran inside and put it on. So it is something he just like had left around because he was always crashing in other people's houses, but he made sure to put it on to show the world that how much he loved motorcycles.
Yeah, but also, you know, speaking of the 50s, I also think that in that time in post-war culture, when the iconic images of pop culture were being crafted for mass consumption for the first time, that's the time when Bob Dylan was coming of age, and he understood just how important the look of artists was. I mean, that's really what we're talking about with Buddy Holly, with Little Richard. You know, the look was so much a part of an artist's image, and so it makes sense that when they were shooting the cover for one of his albums, that he really cared about the image that would come out of that. You know, that he probably hoped that that image would be something for someone else, you know, that like that someone else would look to that image the way that he looked to the important imagery of the 50s, you know, when he was growing up.
Yeah, and that's so weird with all that context, because that's totally true. It's so weird that he and Andy Warhol like didn't get along, because that's exactly what Andy Warhol was making art about. Maybe it was just too like too relevant too soon for Bob, because maybe he did take it like seriously, these images of culture. But another thing about sharing clothes I was gonna bring up, Bob has this like, I love this yellow shirt that he wears, the yellow button down, and then George Harrison is later seen wearing it. I know George was sniffing that shirt. I know he was huffing it.
I just think it's so funny that everyone just assumes it's the same shirt, just like the one in the background.
It looks like the same one.
I mean, I'm sure it's the same, but like we don't know that it's actually like the same.
I didn't know that you were. I thought this was common fact that it was the same shirt. I didn't know there was any question about it.
I mean, I want to believe, you know, I really want to believe that they were besties sharing clothes, but I feel like I have to play devil's advocate, but well, I'm also happy to be a Dylan Harrison.
I'll do some more research after this.
I mean, I love the idea that they were sharing shirts, obviously, but there's another story about like sharing clothes that I really love, actually, and that is when so Ray Padgett found this out. He posted this on his Substack. I feel like by now people can play like Bob Dylan Hotline Bingo, and it's like, oh, Grady Heron has mentioned Ray
Padgett, Lasser, yeah, all of them, the Pantheon.
Yeah. So he interviewed one of the musicians that played with Bob Dylan at Letterman in 1984, and apparently he had brought a suit, like a black suit with a black shirt and a white tie. And when he got changed for the recording, Bob looked at him and was like, "Oh wow, I really like your outfit. Can I wear that?" And so
Wow.
basically he was like, I mean, what are you going to say in that situation? You're not gonna say no to Bob Dylan if he wants to wear your clothes. So yeah, so he took off his clothes and gave them to Bob Dylan, and that's what Bob is wearing at the Letterman performance, iconic performance. And
Wow.
I don't remember if it was the guitar player or the bassist, but they changed into the street clothes that they were wearing beforehand, and also look cool, because they're also
Wow.
stylish.
God, that's awesome.
Isn't that
Bob
fun?
Dylan demanding your clothes.
Yeah, I think that's really
Um,
great.
the thing about him is he's so short. He's so short. I kept trying to look in these photos like for
The
evidence
thing
that he
about
had to
him is,
like he's so petite. I was looking in the photos, the earlier photos, to see if I could see the bottoms of his
if
pants,
I
and I
could
can
see
only
him,
find it
sorry.
a couple instances of the bottom of his pants being rolled up, because I think
Mm,
he did start going to a tailor pretty quickly as soon as he
mm,
had money, so he didn't look foolish. But he's always been like a hanger. Like he's built like a model, a
mhm.
very short model. But it makes sense that his grandson Levi would take up the mantle of that and show everyone Bob's beauty.
Yeah. Well, maybe he got a tailor, but then also Susie was saying that she altered his jeans for
Mm.
him.
Well, there you
Um,
go.
so a tailor or a girlfriend,
Right,
can
of
you cook and
course.
sew, make
Free
flowers
labor.
grow? Um,
Right.
so
Dang.
yeah, I mean, but that's another actually good point that Susie was saying, that she altered his jeans to kind of make them boot cut,
Oh,
and
yes, I do
inserted kind of
remember
a
that.
U shape, and
Yeah.
then who can forget a few years ago Levi's did a collection of they kind of like clothes inspired by the Greenwich Village, and
Yeah.
they had jeans that kind of had that U-shaped insert, like that basically Susie added to his jeans, and you can see it on the cover of Another Side of Bob Dylan. You see it quite clearly.
Mm. Mhm.
And yeah, and then
So cool.
his grandson Levi was in a Levi's commercial with Beyonce.
What? Man, what a cool life.
Full circle.
Another look I want to talk about is when he arrives to the Isle of Wight with Sarah.
Yes.
They are coordinated so perfectly.
Ugh,
The Dylan's got white pants, white shirt, leather jacket, and then Sarah's got the white collar and like a cute little
shift dress.
dress and
Yeah.
these little sunglasses, matching sunglasses. Like this is a statement
They look
of
so cool.
his return to public with his
Yeah.
wife by his side. Oh,
And
it's so awesome.
she was pregnant with Jacob then.
Yes.
Levi's father.
Right. For those who don't know.
For those who don't know. Just- we're just gonna keep bringing it full circle.
Yeah.
Um,
And I wonder if I wonder if Bob was thinking about like his physical appearance change, because his face shape is so different. I mean, for all the conspiracy theories about like Paul McCartney is dead at the time, I don't know why there weren't more about Bob
mhm.
like being replaced with, because he looked and sounded nothing like himself on that first public appearance 3 years after the last time the public saw him. And then
That's
he's like playing with facial hair too, which I think maybe is part of it. But yeah, he just looks so domestic.
so interesting, that the fact that they made up this whole theory about Paul McCartney being dead, and there hadn't even been, as far as I know, like a known accident. Whereas Bob Dylan, there literally was an
Right.
accident that everyone knew about. He disappeared, and yet,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really funny, actually.
I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that that's the same guy going from one album
Yeah,
to the next there.
yeah, and I think everything that we've talked about is actually really encapsulated in that appearance at the Isle of Wight, because, you know, in the mid 60s, he was part of this kind of like ultra hip group of artists really shaping not just music but also fashion, and very much in the conversation, and dictating the
Yeah.
conversation, really.
Creating pop culture at that
Yes,
time.
yes, exactly. And then once he withdrew, that obviously continued, and it it got like more and more intense, really, and like the clothes got more and more extravagant and more out there, to the point where when Bob Dylan returned for the Isle of Wight, and I think, and you can also really, I think you really have to bring the band into that conversation as well, and their um, the visuals that they put out, which both really went completely against the psychedelic, uh,
Hmm.
colorful, floral, freaky um, uh, uh, fashion, and instead was really down home, was a lot more like reduced to something more traditional. And the consequence was that it really came at a time in the late 60s, what I think it made the more out there fashion seem a little bit silly almost. And I think that was like a really interesting pendulum shift. Bob Dylan was gone for a while and like dropped out. And when he came back, he wasn't trying to chase what had been going on without him, but
Hmm.
instead he once again kind of just did what,
Shifts.
yeah, he did kind of, he created out of himself and kind of like only did what felt right to him, which on the one hand you could say seemed really uncool at the time, but then because it was Bob Dylan,
Hmm.
it shifted what was considered cool again. And that just at
Yeah.
the tail end of the 60s, when the decades were about to change anyway, and so much shit was going down in the late 60s that forced popular culture in a different direction. It kind of tapped into that rather than what was like considered cool, like during the summer of love.
Yeah. And once again, he's dressing to match the music that he's making. He looks
Hmm.
like in that full white suit, or when he's on Johnny Cash's show, he
Hmm.
looks like a country musician. He
Hmm.
looks like he's doing like, or like a southern preacher or
Preacher.
something.
I was also
Yeah,
gonna say preacher. Yeah.
he's dressed to the nines. His hair is all cropped very
Hmm.
short. Yeah, he's like dressing to create not just like a look, but the whole of what he is doing at
Hmm.
the time. And then, yeah, it is so ahead of its time. And I also, the hipster look that he has at the Ontario Mariposa Festival, when he has
Oh,
the headband and he has the mustache and he has like a slightly open white button down shirt. That must have looked crazy at the time because it is so 2020s, like hipster guy, Brooklyn hipster guy. It's insane. It's insane. Talk about him like establishing a look way before it's popular. That is like the craziest example of it, I think.
he was trying something. He
Yeah.
was trying something. But even the glasses, the fact that he was
Mm,
embracing the glasses in the late 60s. I mean, so was John Lennon at the time. I think there was
mhm.
generally a bit more of a shift. Um, but yeah, I also think that look at the Mariposa Festival, um, it's kind of an outlier. It's kind of a one off. Like, he
Yeah.
didn't really do that. And there's a couple of those.
Mhm.
Like I'm thinking of, there's a very specific look, but I think it's really fun. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of his best looks, but it's again, like, it's good to try stuff. um the one where he is, this is 1972 or 73, where he is wearing like a little bow tie and like these loafers with like a heel and a little hat, and he's posing with like a massive squash. Do
Yeah,
you know
I
what I'm
can see
talking
it in
about?
my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. um it's again, like, he's trying something, and I respect that. I respect that.
Yeah.
There's a
I love
few
it.
outfits where I really that is really the most I can say for it. He's he's trying. And but hey, that's what you got to do. Like sometimes you put yourself out there, and maybe it doesn't always work, but uh for Bob Dylan it works in most cases. And
Yeah,
I think honestly, I think that's more important than playing it safe.
totally. Um, okay, so we're 45 minutes in. We haven't gotten to the 80s yet.
Yeah, because I also want to talk about the 80s, and the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah, we still have so much to get through.
Yeah. But before we move to the 80s, it is
Mm.
interesting to me that uh, I see a sort of pattern that repeats through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that is that it always feels like Bob Dylan is sort of embracing a certain style related to each decade. And then
Mhm.
towards the end of the decade, he really kind of moves in another direction and ends up moving away from that style. So in the 60s, we've
Mhm.
already talked about he moves away from that kind of flower power psychedelic style. In the 70s, I would say he really leans into the 70s aesthetic in different ways, but I think the 1978 tour is very 70s to me. It really
Mhm.
embraces like all of the uh, polyester that the
Mm.
70s have to offer. And
Mhm.
then when he converts to Christianity, he really he moves away from the strongly theatrical for a bit, and the show business look of it all, which I think the 78
Mhm.
tour has. And if you, for example, look at what he's wearing at the SNL performance, is it the SNL performance that I'm thinking of? Yeah, where he performs "Gotta Serve Somebody." He
Yeah.
looks he looks like a dad. It's
He
so
looks so good.
normie what he wears.
He
What
looks so good though.
uh,
I think it's
it's interesting.
beautiful.
It's interesting that does it for you.
It's just like what his face is looking like at the time, I think is really great.
And also
Wait, I
because
want to look
he's
at him.
and also because he's singing "Gotta Serve Somebody," which we've established is very sexy, right?
Yeah, he is dressed really casual.
Yeah,
He's just like a light it looks like denim jacket on top of just like a striped button down.
it's a pretty
Um
boring outfit,
but his
honestly.
hair is kind of giving Jesus, like the Jesus of the era. Like who was it? Victor Garber in Godspell. Um
Right,
has that kind of like halo, like white person afro thing.
right,
Um and that is kind of on Bob Dylan's head, where it's just kind of surrounding his whole face.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that could be looped into it.
Hmm.
I don't know.
But then it kind of changed again, because I would say, I mean, I love the outfits that he wears I love those satin jackets that he wears in 1980. So 1980 already, definitely 1981, the Trouble No More jacket.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that's a really great look. And then obviously talking about the 80s, in the mid 80s, he really goes full on midlife crisis. Um,
Yes. Well, I think he plugs in to the current look and tries
yeah,
to make it work for him,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
which is why so many people hate it.
he goes full on
I
leather daddy, basically. It's I mean, but also, I mean, as we already said, like with a cover shoot for Highway 61 Revisited, he likes people to know that he likes motorcycles. And that's
Yes.
and that's basically what the 80s were about as well. And that continues into I think I think it's a photo maybe from the Fallen Angels recording session where he wears a t-shirt with a motorcycle club uh
Mm.
emblem, or what do you call it, like logo on it. So
Hmm.
he loves motorcycles, and he likes showing that, you know. So I
Yeah.
think the leather in the 80s had a lot to do with that, but then it also, as you say, it also had that association with almost like hair metal,
Hmm.
like metal bands. And I've always wondered whether that is really what he wanted to communicate.
I'm not that's a good question. I'm thinking a lot more about like the light gray shoulder pad looks
Oh,
that he had going on in the 80s
right.
too.
Hmm.
Um like in the Tight Connection music video, like on the
Yeah.
Empire Burlesque cover.
Hmm.
But both of those examples, he has no shirt on underneath, which is, I think, the most notable thing about these outfits.
That's the most Bob Dylan thing about it.
He loves to show off his chest. And I wonder if it is he's working with some kind of like understanding of fashion, of like how much skin you should show and his own body proportions. Like maybe it elongates him or
Hmm.
something like that. Um, or it's just what he thinks is sexy.
Maybe he just likes his chest and likes to show it off, which is so fair, you know?
I mean, yeah, in I was just looking at this in Ronaldo and Clara. There's
Mm.
that scene of the two women, and Sarah is like holding him and like kind of pulls him back and they almost
Mhm.
fall together, and he's wearing a vest with no shirt on underneath, and his chest looks really good.
I mean, Ann Powers talked about that at the 2019 Bob Dylan
Mm,
conference. She gave
yes.
one of the keynotes, and she called that era like the shirtless period. Um,
Yeah.
I did talk to her afterwards and said, like, you know, the shirtless period has actually persisted.
Yeah, it is not
It's not.
ended.
It's still ongoing.
Yeah. He did
um,
it like 2 years ago,
yeah,
or
with the
he did
wide
it
zip
very
up.
recently.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, maybe I mean, maybe he likes his chest. Maybe someone told him that they really like his chest, and he was like, bet.
Or
I
maybe he
mean,
just gets sweaty, but he doesn't want to give up the jacket because the jacket's like so integral to his look.
yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, there is a story, and I hope that I'm allowed to share that. If not, we'll edit it out. But someone did a photo shoot with Bob Dylan and said that he arrived with a whole bin bag or trash bag, as you would say, full of clothes for the photo shoot. And that in of itself is, I don't know, intuitively makes a lot of sense to me. You know, that he would care about clothes. He would want to bring his own clothes, but he brings them in a trash bag. You know, and that to me seems, yeah, that makes sense.
It's like him digging on the floor, picking up a clothes from the floor. Like they're
Yeah,
important to him, but not enough to like store well or
yeah.
anything.
He doesn't have a steamer or anything
That's
like
just a
that, you
guy
know.
thing.
Yeah. But also, I mean,
um,
he has someone taking care of his clothes, and
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Shout out Pip Newbury, who was the costumer on Hearts of Fire, was also the
Bingo.
costumer on yeah, was also the costumer on Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is an interesting connection.
Mhm.
Pip is the one who made that fishing lure jacket that Timothy Chalamet now owns.
Mm.
Um, all those patches, that must have taken a lot of work. I think
Mhm.
it's a work of art, and I'm glad that Timothy sees that. Shout out Pip.
Well, but what I was saying about this pattern that repeats like through the different decades, about how he always like embraces a decade and kind of moves away from it. I think that happened again in the 80s, where yes, he did embrace the 80s with the shoulder pads and the leather vests and the motorcycle gear, motorcycle boots, and the, can't forget the dangly earring.
Of
Um,
course.
but then towards the end of the decade and then really into the 90s, he moved towards what we now would say is kind of like grunge,
Mm,
and really left that overly stylized look of the 80s behind and kind of went really like, you know, he dressed down a lot and went a lot more casual. I mean, some looks were still a bit out there, you know, the shirts were still very shiny occasionally, but the way he wore them was a lot more, I don't know, effortless, or less, it looked less dressed up.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really interesting. And then really it was like in the mid to late 90s that he changed fully into the performance mode, the cowboy mode, the cowboy band mode, that he would then kind of like keep until very recently, where he really had a performance wardrobe that, you know, with beautiful suits that the band would
Mhm.
also wear, and there would be like a very coherent look on stage.
Yeah.
And it feels like something he came into his own as a performer in some way, I think, aesthetically around that time in his
Mhm.
mid 50s. That's cool.
Yeah, when I think of like the um bootlegs you can find on YouTube, which are
Mhm.
mostly from like 2000s through 2010s, I think of that silver suit with the
Mm.
little accoutrements on it, which is really a great look. And like he has a similar black suit, and it also has that kind of flare at the bottom of the trousers. Um, and once again, the facial hair, it steps in here around Masked and Anonymous with his little pencil mustache, which
Mhm.
I know you love.
I love it. It's great. I also have to say, uh,
Mhm.
I almost regret not bringing Britt Eisner on this episode because she is an expert when it comes to Bob Dylan's wardrobe, and she has
Mhm.
identified so many pieces. She was the one who told me that I think he actually has two of these silver suits, at least two,
Mhm.
with like
Mhm.
subtle variations. And if anyone is interested in Bob Dylan's wardrobe, in his clothes, you should absolutely follow Brit on Instagram. Also, shout out, I don't know if you saw, Brit just got an amazing denim shirt or jacket that was made by Shot of Love 69, and it has the cover of Saved on the back.
Whoa.
It's
Oh, that's so
so
cool.
cool. It's so beautiful. It's handmade, hand painted, and everything. We gotta. I have to. I have to link to that. You have to edit this,
Yeah, I'll show
please,
that.
because it's absolutely gorgeous. And you know, I think Brit really deserves it because like she's, you know, she is the number one researcher when it comes to Bob's clothes. So
Mhm.
who better than her to wear this proudly? Um, but yeah, I think the once again, I think the suits that he started wearing on stage also reflect a shift that happened in his music at the time. Because I think even though the Neverending Tour began in the late 80s, I think there was something in the mid to late 90s where something really fell into place. And I don't know if that was partly because of the band, because it did really feel like the Larry Charlie era had something that was just magic.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that was maybe reflected in the way that the band also appeared on stage, and that there was like a uniform look, and with Bob Dylan as the focal point in the middle. Um, but I just really appreciate that he was wearing these very elaborate, beautiful suits and shirts. And I don't know, I think there's just something really, again, it speaks to him wanting to make an effort for the audience. And
Mhm.
I think that is notable because, again, there are so many people who say, oh, he doesn't even talk to the audience. Clearly, he doesn't even care that the audience is there. It's like, no, this man made an effort. You know, he is out here singing his songs. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if he says hi or hello or whatever. Like, he put on like a sparkly shirt.
And even now, I mean, we got to talk about the North Face jackets,
Yes.
but he does still wear interesting shirts underneath those sometimes. There was one recently that resembled this iconic Highway 61 shirt, but it was
Mm.
flamingos on it. And we were like freaking out about it because it looked so similar.
Honestly, this is something we have to talk about, and because Andy also mentioned it in her
Yeah.
question about Bob Dylan repeating the suede jacket on the covers of Blonde on Blonde, John Wesley Harding, and Nashville Skyline, Bob
Mhm.
Dylan is an outfit repeater. And
Yeah.
this is really really interesting when it comes to him consciously playing with iconic outfits. I think one really important one is Bob Dylan at the MTV Unplugged,
Mhm.
where he
Yes.
repeats exactly that iconic look from the mid 60s that we already mentioned. He's wearing the polka dot shirt, he's wearing the Wayfarer sunglasses, he has the harmonica rack, and this is him at a time in his career where he is uh, really wanting to make sure that he's still perceived as relevant. He is really striving to reach a younger audience because it is a kind of a crucial point. He is middle aged, bordering on past middle aged, and uh, trying to build himself up as a legacy artist while also not wanting to seem as a has been. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting line to walk. And on the one hand, I think he is trying to keep things fresh with the never ending tour by playing all new places, trying to reach younger audiences, trying to reach new audiences with every concert. But at the same time, he appears at MTV Unplugged, where I think there is also a certain pressure to still appeal to his pre existing fan base and to, again, be legible as Bob Dylan. This was
Mhm.
also around the same time when he appeared at Woodstock, with Woodstock '94, even though he didn't appear at the original Woodstock. So I think this is really about establishing himself as a certain type of artist, and it's interesting to see the clothes being a part of that. And
Mhm.
then, of course, a similar thing kind of happened on Shadow Kingdom,
Mm.
where he wore the shirt that I think is maybe less legible to people who aren't like big fans, but I think the those who know that that was a shirt that he wore in 1984, for example, at Wembley, and it's this kind of
Mhm.
like wild zebra pattern shirt, which I love. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool to see that make an appearance again on Shadow Kingdom.
Yeah, he must keep those pieces for a long time.
Hmm.
Like he has a favorite shirt that he's just got in his closet. Um yeah, I was also thinking of the zebra shirt and how much of a 180 it is that like you're saying he wants to be legible as Bob Dylan today. Now he's not legible as Bob Dylan at all. I was really lucky at the Forest Hills show that it was phone free, but they were not policing binoculars. So I
Mm.
had little tiny like birding binoculars that I could use to, and I saw his face. Like I was from the middle of the crowd, but I could see his face so well. And it just like gave me that feeling of like, oh, that's Bob Dylan.
There he is.
Because there he is. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, the full silhouette, I mean, you can tell because of his stature, I think, but to other people, he's not legible as
Mm.
Bob Dylan right now.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with that is that after years where he put on this persona when he steps out on stage, um, by putting on a beautiful suit for his performance, it's almost like there's been a collapse between the person on stage and the person he is backstage, because for a
Mm.
while there was this split where you were like, well, when the hoodie's up, you don't approach Bob Dylan. There are all those
Mhm.
stories that when he's a private person, he's dressing down, he's wearing the hoodie, he doesn't really want to be seen, and then he becomes Bob Dylan the performer when he steps out on stage. But now the two are one and the same. So it is interesting, and
Mm.
I think that is partly why uh it's been so confusing for people to see him with the hood up, like at the concert, because it really basically screams, "Don't look at me."
So he is doing Bob Dylan still. I
Yeah.
didn't think about that. Yeah, the hoodie has been part of his lore for a long
Hmm.
time. it's how he got arrested in New Jersey while he was trolling around the
Yeah.
beach town, and he's in that hoodie and is unrecognizable. That's interesting.
And this leads to the question that Andy was asking, do we see the North Face jacket as an artistic statement?
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that he wears it every night, I think does make it so.
I think whenever there's a uniform, you do
Yeah.
assume that it is at least deliberate. And
Mm-hmm.
for an artist who has always been quite deliberate in his appearances, it certainly seems so. Though what exactly it communicates is maybe less clear.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before, like it's probably to do with phones and being recorded against his will. It probably is like a shield in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But why that jacket? It's just his raincoat that he happens to have, and then he liked it so much he got more, maybe.
Yeah, or maybe it is simply that, I don't know. I think we cannot completely discount the possibility that it's a kind of laziness where he just doesn't want to get changed. He's like, well, I'm already wearing this. I don't want to get into my suit. He's in his mid 80s. But I don't know. I really liked it when he was wearing nice clothes for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Even when it was the zip up white shirt, which became a uniform a couple of years ago during the Outlaw tour, because that was also casual. Because okay, we have to say this. I think there was a transitional period in between where he was dressed down, but not quite in hoodie mode yet. So for a while, he had like the t-shirt under the suit jacket, which I personally
Yes.
really liked. I thought that was very casual,
Cool
but there was
look.
like a coolness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't mind him bringing that back.
When we're thinking about Bob kind of like setting the pace for the next decade, like that's a pattern that you've clocked. I could see this being the fashion of the future with I don't know if you know about like the flock cameras that have been going on in the US. Like surveillance is becoming so prevalent. I remember when like when Anonymous was talked about a lot, like maybe 10 years ago, there was ideas of like wearing makeup that makes you undetectable to facial recognition cameras. I mean, he could be setting a standard with that hood business.
Yeah, there are all those clothes and scarves and whatever that make it so that cameras don't pick up on like your image. I don't know if that's just for Flash or if that's in general, but I think there are those kind of anti-paparazzi clothes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I've seen it as like makeup that like
Right.
exaggerates your features in like a asymmetrical way.
Oh, he's
And it
gonna,
also
as soon
is
as someone tells him about that, it's over.
And it's also relevant in the music industry because have you heard about the MSG CEO has this he's been implementing this facial recognition technology in MSG, which is also owns the Beacon and Bowery and all these other venues, and making a list of LGBTQ celebrities, performers there. And it's like, that's
What?
so scary. Yeah, this just recently came out. Phoebe Bridgers, Emily Green from Geese, they're like on this list of like
What's
gay
the
performers
list?
to track. I don't know what the list is,
Ugh.
but this list has been found as directed to by the CEO of MSG. So yeah, it's getting really scary out there with this surveillance state, and specifically in this music industry under the guise of like safety or whatever they say it is.
Yeah. Well, and meta glasses as well, which are just so deeply creepy. I mean, it's
Creepy.
it is really fascinating how I don't think Bob Dylan is necessarily consciously making a statement about the increasing surveillance nature of technology. That's not a term, but you know what I mean, right? uh, about how there is like the increasing capability to constantly surveil, um, and it seems like Bob Dylan's whole mode about wanting to not be seen, really, like, be it because of the hoodie or because he's hiding behind the piano, behind lamps, um, but the more I hear about technology like the meta glasses, the more I want to hide, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting how how his way of appearing in performance kind of runs concurrently to a lot of those conversations. I mean,
Hmm.
one thing that I thought was really interesting about the meta glasses, and I'm aware that this is a sidebar, but I think it's not unimportant to generally talk about, is that all the ads for these meta glasses, which are sunglasses where you can automatically record someone, and it's like fairly easy to turn off the little light that communicates that you're recording, so like you can basically surreptitiously record people without their consent, and that all the ads for those meta glasses feature women,
Hmm.
and how that is so telling, because if there were men in these ads, it would so immediately read as potentially creepy, which they can be, because I think immediately would have images of men non-consensually recording women.
Hmm.
uh I
Yeah.
don't like it. Anyway, that's kind of just as a
Yeah,
sidebar.
and I think Bob Dylan, whether he's intentionally doing that or not, he is like a bellwether for trends and
Yeah.
changes in society. So yeah, I bet we'll all be wearing some kind of North Face jacket in a couple years.
Well, I guess, like, yeah, I don't know. This is just. I was going to ask you, do you think we'll move away from the North Face jacket again, or do you think this
Mhm.
is his
Well,
look for the foreseeable future?
in his indoor like rough and rowdy shows, I feel like he's had the hood down
Mm,
um sometimes,
yeah,
and I hope for more of that because seeing his beautiful hair is such a treat and such a iconic part of Dylan.
yeah.
So I hope he chooses to do more indoor shows where that is the case, where he can be seen at least his head.
I wanted to add one more thing
Mhm.
about current Bob Dylan and the way he dresses, be it in the beautiful kind of cowboy suits or in the North Face jacket, because uh, either way, I'm so glad that Bob Dylan hasn't embraced the truly horrible aesthetic of a lot of aging rock stars, which is the kind of like black skinny jeans and like lots. It's like the Johnny Depp look of it all, which
Ugh, yeah.
I think is the worst. Um, I, and or I mean, also Keith Richards, and all of that. Like, obviously Keith
Yeah.
Richards is he's really he's the originator of that look, so he's allowed to do that. But I think no one else is allowed to do that. And I think so often it reads as unauthentic and just
Mhm.
really cosplaying rock star to me.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that Bob Dylan has continued to uh, embrace his own style, even when he's tapping into, traditional costuming. The he writes about the what's the not nudie, but like the nudie suits and the original tailor. He writes about him in the Philosophy of Modern Song. My copy isn't here. I don't know where I'm looking in my bookshelf. Um, Manolo, maybe something. Manuel.
Manuel?
Uh,
I don't know.
we can put a correction somewhere. Um, but I like that he has continued to go his own way with his style. And
yeah, it's perfectly in alignment with his musical
yeah,
style that he takes from the current era, but he always follows his intuition and has incredible integrity about it, I think.
this has been the Bob Dylan Hotline. And if you have a question for us, please send us a voice memo to bobdylanhotline@gmail.com. And we'll do our best to answer it.
But we know that the answer, my friend,
Is blowing in the wind.